It's clear, the sun is about to rise, and it is the perfect way to start a day on a Saturday safari. This is Safari Live. Ready? Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning everyone and welcome to our sunrise safari. As I said, it is a beautiful, cold, clear winter's morning, and well, it's Saturday, and that means that we are definitely going to be trying to look for any cats that we possibly can find to start things off this morning. Now, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Sebastian, and like I said, we are going to look around for cats. So we are on the northern side of Djuma Dam, trying to just see if there's any sign of this male lion we heard, as well as reports of Tingana that came through the dam at some stage last night. So thank you to all of you that did let us know. Remember, the rest of you can also ask any questions, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and if you can maybe give us a time that you saw Tingana, that would also be quite helpful in our endeavor to find the cats on Saturday morning. So we are going to try and get going now. It's time to start seeing what we can find. It seems the sun is just about to rise over the eastern horizon, which is the perfect time to be out. It is cold, like I said this morning, so I'd imagine that maybe, just maybe, we're going to see a little bit of activity from the predators for a little bit longer this morning. It is much cooler than what we've had over the last few mornings, so hopefully that will mean that we have lions walking about, leopards all over the place, and, well, just a ridiculously epic morning. And it sounds like my co-worker and friend Stefan Winterboer is all the way in the Masai Mara, and well, he's kicking off Saturday in fine style.
I don't quite know what Tristan was thinking of saying happy Saturday for this Saturday morning. And yes, good morning to you. My name is Stef Winterboer. On camera we have Xander for a change today. And yes, we are sitting with some lions in the grass. Now you can just see the back of a lioness over there. There's a whole bunch of lions there actually. This is the Angama Pride, the pride of lion that live at the base of the Olololo escarpment just below. And there's a tail of a cub at the base of the Olololo escarpment just underneath the Angama Mara camp. You can see those little cubs. There we go. Awesome. It's tackling mom. Of course, mom being the object of a lot of games with young lions. They practice their stalking and their pouncing and their tripping all on the very, very patient mothers. There seems like a lot of lion there in actual fact, not just one or two. I can see a tired mom there. She looks like she's got a full belly. Difficult to say if they ate last night. The wind was blowing a bit last night. It was very difficult for us to hear what was going on. But he's got that heavy-bellied swing. A contented lion. Now, the grass is very tall this time of the year, and you can see it starting to change color. Although there's no winter here as there is in Djuma, where Tristan is at the moment, where you'll notice all those very dark grays. Ah, there we go, and disappeared. Gone. The grass here has just changed from a green color to this golden brown color, and very suited to lions at this particular point. The grass is nice and high and the same color as what their skins are, or their fur is. Let's have a look at that. A dark green tree line right there in the center of your screen. That is the Mara River and the riverine forest around the Mara River. We're on the floodplains adjacent to the river. And this is dominated by this tall grass, mostly in this particular area, a grass called red grass, Thermida, and then a few tree species, a few hardy tree species. You're looking at a Balanites thicket. Now, Tristan can possibly show you another type of Balanites that we get at Djuma. That is the that's the torchwood. This Balanites here is a different type of, it was a different species. I forget now the actual genus. I think it's, I wouldn't have a clue actually. I'll have to go and look it up. but it is definitely a Balanites, and that at least we share in common. I'm told that Tingana walked across the dam wall last night at Djuma, across the Djuma dam wall. I hope that you get to see him today. It would be nice to hear from the ladies and Tristan on that side, what he's looking like and how robust he is. Of course, I haven't seen a leopard since I left Djuma. It's very difficult to find out here in the Mara, as you can imagine, with these grasslands that don't suit leopard very well. Mainly just hyena, cheetah and lion. Now, Emma Ruth, you wanted to know how high the grass is. Emma Ruth, this Thermida grows to about, let's say, 4 foot. I could go standing in that grass and it would be just underneath my armpit, basically, and I'm 6 foot tall. There's Xander doing a lovely shot of the actual grass stem. So that's about 4 foot. If you had to walk through this grassland, the grass would be probably between belly button and armpit height. Come on, cubs, come on to the termite mound and come and show us what you're doing. They're having a good game there, and very difficult to see actually in this grass, but they're on the shady part, or the sunny part of that termite mound. You can just see the lion cleaning itself in the grass there. These lions loving this particular area, and the reason for that is that they've got cubs in the area, and these cubs are young and they're not moving a lot, and lioness will tend to stay in around about the same area when they've got cubs, and that's because the cubs don't move very far. They're still not strong enough to move very far, and although you can't say exactly where these lions are going to be, another lioness walking off there. There's a fair amount of certainty that they'd come back to roughly the same area. For the couple of weeks that cubs are very small. So you're looking at about 8 weeks to about 12 weeks. And then the lioness will start to walk off and cover more of their territory. Lael, you want to know if lions get fur balls like house cats do, because you saw one coughing the other day, and this lion licking itself. Lael, yeah, absolutely, they get fur balls. The biggest fur ball I've ever seen a lion hack up was about the diameter of an American football and bigger, and about a softball size. So let me see, that lioness's ears now, they were about, if you could turn that into a sphere, that is how big the fur ball is that I've seen a lion hack out, made up of very densely compressed fur. Of course, lions, very similar to house cats, do battle with fur balls, and they can actually be detrimental to them long-term health. The only animals out here that can really deal well with fur are owls and hyena, funnily enough. Oh, that is such a beautiful shot. The lioness in the grass. Let's see where she's going. I've got a feeling that they're lying up in the grass there. It's now the third lion that we've seen, plus some cubs, walk off in that direction. And when she goes flat, I'll move the car a little bit and see if we can get a better view. Now just behind the tree, of course. The sounds this morning are fantastic. There's still a breeze blowing. Not a very strong breeze, but it's bringing us some sounds of elephant on the river that are screaming at something. It's also bringing up some sounds of hyena. These lions are dead quiet. I think let's go forward a little bit and see if we can't get a better view of these lions from a little bit further forward. All of a sudden got a hay fever attack from something. Sky, good morning to you. You'd like to know how long it'll take the grass to get short when the wildebeest arrive. Not very long at all. It'll take about 3 months, and then all this grass will be nice and flat and like golf coursey, like this big. Not all the grass. The wildebeest don't eat every single species of grass. They're quite selective feeders, and they'll just take the best grasses, of course. And I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what impact they have. Everyone says that it goes flat over here, and you can't see. You can see as far as the grasslands stretch, but that is yet to be seen for me in any case. Right, we've got two lions, one standing up down there, and another one quite close to us over here in the same place. Not quite sure what they're doing. It looks like they may be hunting this morning. That one there looking off wistfully into the distance. I think a quick scan of the surroundings wouldn't be a bad idea. Let's see what is around. The zebra and the giraffe and the impala have not come down off the slopes yet from last night. I expect that at a point they would. And this lion could be listening to almost anything, really. Looking back at her pride mates. There's a lion lying up in the grass. Much closer to where we are. I think that this lion will probably start to feel lonely in a bit. Get up and move. And then we should have some pretty nice lion shots of these trees in the background. James, you wanted to know if there's ever been a year where the migration did not arrive and how detrimental to the ecosystem that would be. James, I don't know of a specific event of when the wildebeest arrived, of a specific year. I do know that didn't arrive. I do know that it has happened before. So there are years where there is a lot of rainfall in the Serengeti and the grass stays healthy and doesn't disappear. And those years, the wildebeest numbers are not as huge as they are if the Serengeti dries up. How detrimental would it be? I don't think it would be detrimental at all. Obviously, there'd be less churning up of the soil. There'd be less dung deposited on these flats, on these alluvial flats. But of course, there'd be less compression and compaction. I don't think it'll have an effect at all, to be honest. Not here in the Mara Triangle, at least, anyway. There's enough animals over here that the lion prides and the cheetah and the hyena have got an abundance of food as is. Not an overabundance like the migration brings, but definitely an abundance of food. And they wouldn't go hungry. At a baseline plant level, I can't think of anything out of the norm, perhaps with the exception of there being not that massive load of dung deposited on these grasslands. Good question there, James. I don't think it will have an effect at all, personally. Has it happened before? Yes, absolutely. Will it happen again? Most definitely. It's not going to happen this year, though. The Serengeti started to dry up lots of weeks ago. And as far as I understand it now, it's just a series of dusty plains with very, very little there. And that is because Kenya and northern Tanzania is in the throes of a fairly large drought at the moment, and one that is set to continue into this year and next. Right, the sun here has been up for a good hour already. And it hasn't at Djuma. And so off you go and have a look at Tristan and what is apt to be a fantastic sunrise.
Indeed, it's quite amazing that the Mara is bathed in golden light already, and yet our sun is not quite up. It's always interesting to watch, but you can see the little orange orb starting to come just below the horizon there. Between the trees is the big orange ball, and it's going to come slowly up, and we're going to have a magnificent view of that sun rising over the eastern horizon. It should be very, very pretty. And this is one of the best places to watch the sunrise. I love coming up to Buffelshoek cut line to watch it. You've got this sort of rolling road that goes straight, and the sun always rises on this eastern highland area, and it's just so pretty to spend time here. And also it's a great place to be able to hear all the sounds of the morning. We've had grey hornbills calling, there've been hyenas in the distance. Just generally very, very nice just to sit and take it all in and enjoy the fact that we're starting another day in one of the most beautiful places in the world. It always intrigues me as to how fast the sun rises and sets in Africa. Sweet history, you say? Oh my goodness, look at those colors. Well, this morning they are beautiful. You've got these sort of pinks and yellows and oranges that are showing themselves as the sun is rising, and it is very, very pretty. So we're being spoilt with a fantastic view of the sun rising this morning. Like I say, it's just so nice just to sit and enjoy that moment as the sun comes up. There's a few sort of very thin layers of mist that are in the area. That's not very thick this morning. In fact, it's almost not noticeable. And that, coupled with the birds that are starting to wake up, makes for a very, very pretty scene, and one that's such a nice way to start the day. Like I say, you just sit here and you just take it all in, and it is the best way. Sometimes we get so sort of engrossed in trying to find animals as soon as we get going that we sometimes just take the sunrise for granted, and it's always good just to sit and watch it coming up over the horizon. You can actually see there's a bit of sort of haze on the horizon as the sun comes up. Isn't that cool? Look how quickly it moves. It's always nice when you've got the trees in the horizon to sort of see how fast the sun comes up. Wow. Seb, that's not the worst way to start a day.
For sure.
For sure. And it's incredible on our screen, so that the eye, it's amazing what the eyes can pick up in terms of color and how far cameras still have to go, but we have a bright red sun for our eyes. So Megan from Louisiana, you say, could you imagine waking up to that every morning? Well, Megan, I know we are spoiled, aren't we? We're very, very spoiled to be able to sit and watch this coming up every day. It is absolutely beautiful. And we are spoiled with some of the most magical sunrise and sunsets. Sometimes when we get the clouds and then you get these beautiful colors that reflect off the clouds, it is amazing. I would imagine if we had to go through the history of all the sunrises and sunsets, we would have some incredible ones to display. We should actually do a time lapse, or not a time lapse, but a sort of highlight reel of all our best sunrises and sunsets over the years of Wild Earth. It'd be quite amazing actually to see how not only how many amazing ones we have, but also how they've developed in terms of being able to capture them with cameras and technology. It's amazing what technology can do these days. So it would be really cool actually to do that. Maybe we should do that one day. There we go. That's our sun up and over the horizon now. It's just breaking past the last trees as it does. So right, Seb, I think that's our cue to start moving along and trying to see if we can't find this Birmingham boy that was making noise. Interesting to see where the Birmingham boys have been moving around. I saw an update this morning that 3 of them were down in Mala Mala at some point. So crazy to think that they've moved all the way down there, and apparently it's the furthest south that they've been seen in a long time. So I wonder what they're up to. They seem to be sort of moving around. I wonder if they've sensed that there's not as much calling from the south in terms of the Masapiri males, which the one that's being so badly injured at the moment and is not really contributing into keeping that area safe. And I wonder if they've seen a gap now to be able to push down further south to the Sand River. Only time will tell. Now, talking about lions, Stef is still with the Angama Pride, and hopefully they're still on the move and merging out of that long grass, and there's going to be some beautiful visuals.
And as promised, we got a lioness walking off in the grass for you. This is the last one in this particular pride, the Angama Pride, moving from a termite mound out to a place where that just looks like they're lying down in the grass, which is surprising. I suppose they'll move towards the end of the day, but we've got some lines still to show you, which is nice. Here's the back of the ears. Those dark marks at the back of the ears. 2 lioness. All right. just keep on popping up out of the grass here. Those dark marks behind the ears, very conspicuous, and that is the communication signals. It's a visual marker that a lot of animals have. Lions have it on the backs of their ears, they have it on the tips of their tails, and they use it like flags, like signal flags, to flag cubs, to flag each other, to coordinate movements. It's not yet known exactly to what extent they talk with their ears, but it is an absolute fact that they use their ears and their faces to, the markings on their faces to enhance the movements. Now, Jason, and you the first person I've ever spoken to out of Sri Lanka, so hello. You'd like to know if lions have a spike at the end of their tail, and if so, what is it used for? Jason, it's not a spike as in like something out of myths and legends, like a dragon spike, but I will say this, that if you take a cat's tail and you run your fingers to the end of the tail and you poke it, you will see that there's a fairly sharp, it's not a barb, but the tail comes to a fairly sharp, hard end. And that is because the spinal column extends to the end and the very tip of the tail and ends in a pointy bone. Very similar to the end of your finger, I suppose, except that there's a little bit more meat at the end of your finger. So there's a myth around that lions can goad themselves into a rage by thrashing their tail and the spike into their flanks and sides, which is a precursor to a charge. And there's a lot of books that I've read over the years that tell about this, and in part it's based on some truth. There's a hard barb at the end of a lion's tail. It is a spike, and if thrashed hard enough against yourself, it will hurt. Lions, when they cross, do thrash their tails tremendously. And an angry lion will thrash its tail up and down and from side to side, and it could look like they're goading themselves or whipping themselves up into a rage with a spike. But it's not the truth. It's just the two are very similar. The one is that a lion does obviously thrash its tail around. The other one is that it does have a sharp end to its tail, but it's not used to make themselves angry. Hopefully that answered your question there, Jason. The easiest way for me to explain what it feels like is to, next time you see a house cat, is to just run your hand down the tail, and when you get to the tip of the tail, just poke it with your finger, and you'll see that there's a hard barb at the end. Lions have exactly the same thing, just obviously on a bit of a larger scale. I'm glad we get to still see these lions. Difficult to see individual features with this light that we've got. It's beautiful. There we go. Have a look at that quickly with your screenshots. Here's a lion cub, obviously bored with just seeing grass in front of its face. Wanted to get a periscope view of what's happening in its world. I must say, I'd also climb a tree if all I saw was grass for weeks and weeks at the end. Very cool. Lion cubs, very playful this time of the day. And they've just come out of a night. Mom's probably spent the night hunting in and around this area. They would have been on their own for most of the night, which is terrifying in this area. As you can see, there's not a lot of hiding places, and cubs with the ability to climb trees, like these are practicing now, is vital in this area because of the sheer number of hyena around. And this is very good playing. Andra, you would like to know at what age would the cubs switch to eating only meat? Andra, they fully weaned. They are weaned at a couple of weeks, so you're looking at between 12 and 16 weeks. They are already eating meat, but they will continue to supplement feed milk for between 9 and 12 months. It's different for different cubs and for different reasons, and it's mainly just nutrition and food based. But they're eating meat from as little as 8 weeks, possibly even a little bit earlier than that. They're fully weaned at about 9 months, where mom will stop giving them milk, but it's not uncommon for it to go up to about a year. I wouldn't be surprised to see a cub suckling at a year. They're starting to come out now. Yeah, the little cub are going to tackle his mom. these little cubs. Those are the youngest cubs that you're looking at over there. Oh, such a nice view before they disappear into the grass. All right, Tristan's got an elephant to show you. We're going to see if we can reposition slightly differently to get a better view of these lions. We'll be back with you just now.
Well, we had Ellies out in the open, but they've just sneaked into a thicket, so I'm just going to try and get forward. But there's a nice big herd that's just stretched around this area at the moment, and so I'm going to try and find the best place to see them. Hopefully they're not going to all go down into the drainage line, because it's very thick and very dense inside here, and not the best place to be. Now, here is our female just over here. Are you grumpy this morning, girl? Hopefully not. And hopefully we'll be able to get a nice view of them if I just come this way. There we go, Seb. That's not bad. So elephants have been missing from this area for a while. We haven't seen too many of them. We've been finding tracks, but actually no signs of the Ellies themselves. And so I'm super excited that we actually have found a nice large herd that we can potentially spend a nice amount of time with. There is lots and lots of them here. The more we drive along, the more we're seeing. In fact, they're stretching probably about 300 meters behind us, and I can see more of them in front of us as well. And they're all just inside the drainage section, which would have been probably a good area to have been yesterday with the wind, and they'll start moving out as it's warming up now. I'm pretty sure we're going to see them moving out into the more open sections. So we're going to stay with our Ellies a little bit longer as we watch our playful female roll her trunk around, and while we do that, I believe Stef's lions are starting to emerge from that long grass towards the road.
And these cubs came out of the grass. These are the youngest members of the Angama Pride. And just have a look at that. It is a very rare treat to see them out of the grass on the open road like that. Hence the urgency of getting you back from Tristan. I'm so worried that they move off and we don't get to see them. There's a slightly older cub, and have a look at that full belly. That is just evidence that they had a good meal last night, which I'm very happy for. So not just milk. Oh, those little teddy bear cubs. He's busy attacking his little stump. Here come the rest as well. Oh, beautiful light this morning. A real special treat before they disappear into their den site for the day. I'm quite rare to see these cubs out in the day, I must be honest with you. Ears perked up at the siblings coming through the grass. Dear watcher, you'd like to know when lion cubs start hunting. Dear watcher, as you see with this very alert posture of this cub now, that is a hunting posture. They are hunting right now. And although it's siblings and grasshoppers and birds right now, that is the precursor to serious hunting. And what they're doing is they're copying their parents. They're following their own instincts, but they're also copying. Here's one sibling. There we go. He saw that it was a sibling. And it'll get gradually more and more serious as time goes by. And females will be totally beneficial to hunting and add value, not just a mouth to feed. From about, I'd say about a year old, 14 months old. And they would be from about a year and a half old to about 2 years old, they start to really add value. And then after that, they're looking at their grandmothers starting to pass away, and them then starting to really be needed as huntresses in the pride from about 2.5 to 3 years or so, 3 years old or so. And they will then just gain in experience all the way up to 12 to 14 years old, which is when the lion generally passes on. Here you just see another vehicle in the shot. Lovely that they're getting the lions walking right by them. This is, of course, an open reserve where there are lots of people that can share in these lions on a non-exclusive basis, which means that you can come to Kenya, you can rent a car, or you can go on safari with someone who has their own car, and you can come and see these cats just as easily as what we're watching them today. Lots of lions just pouring out of the bush now. Awesome. There you go. Isn't that just fantastic? You can see how the lions are walking right by that car, not taking any notice of it. And that's just testimony to the fact that we haven't been threatening these lions or these cats for generations already. They're growing up from cubs knowing that human beings in cars are not worried. They're not going to worry them. But we're going to be sending you over to Tristan, who's got something that's just as close to the car as these lions are, and just as dangerous.
Well, we've got this elephant female who's being very cheeky this morning. She's already had... Oh, lovely. And that's what you're going to do now as well. So not only has she just come and given us nonsense by shaking her head at me and, well, having this threatening posture, but she's now just turned her backside towards me and told me exactly what she thinks of the situation and let out a few balls of dung. And she's been full of nonsense this morning. She came first to us and shook her head at us, and then she chased a starling that was just going about its own business. So I don't know why she's in such a grumpy mood this morning. Maybe they bumped into our lion that was calling at some stage last night, and that's why she's a bit grumpy. But it's interesting, the rest of the herd doesn't seem fazed by us at all. Maybe it's because that's her young one that's just moving in the background there, and so she's just providing a bit of protection from that one, from this big object that's arrived. What has also happened is we know that we haven't seen Ellies for a while, so this could be a herd that's come out of Kruger, and sometimes the Ellies that come out of Kruger can be a little bit on the grumpy side, because unfortunately vehicles that drive themselves around in the Kruger Park often don't know how to behave around elephants and can cause quite a few problems. And so the Ellies come this side in a bit of a bad mood, and it takes a few days for them to get used to our presence again and then calm down. But she seems like she's okay for now. So you can see she's still listening to me. She's not actually feeding. She's pretending like she's feeding, but she's got her head around the corner and just kind of staring at me. The trunk every now and then is just smelling towards my direction, and then there is these ears that are listening as well. So you watch the trunk. There we go. You see it's just sniffing our direction every now and then. So John, you say her skin looks very dry, well, drier than normal. It's not that. I think she's just had a really good dust bath, and that's why you've got this grey sort of appearance to it. But that's how their skin normally looks. They often do have skin like that. She's also got lots of mud on it. No, stop it now. No. Stop. So you can see she's being cheeky this morning, which is not how we want our female elephants. Yes, go. We're not doing anything to you. Okay. And you can see that typical bounce that an elephant gets when it's being a little bit cheeky. That's how they are. So we'll let her carry on before we move. But I'm not sure what she's so grumpy about. We've done absolutely nothing. It's not like we're moving in any way. And like I say, she took out some frustration on a poor starling as well that was just sitting right by her feet and really not worrying her. So she's just in a bit of a mood, and that's okay. They sometimes can be, and we'll allow her to be in a bit of a mood. It's a cold morning, and it is Saturday, and I suppose I have ruined their Saturday peace early in the morning with a Rusty. At least we're not squeaking. Imagine if we were squeaking this morning. Yesterday, Rusty had a really nice squeaking problem, and I'm sure she would have loved that given her current mood. But I'm definitely not going to be moving too much now, because I'm going to allow her just to relax a bit and just to calm down. She's now given me a display that she's kind of warning me that you're close enough, that's it, I don't want you to come any closer, and that was what that was. She was posturing, so she was up, head up, showing how big she is. And so when they do that, it's just their way of saying that's where you are now is where I want you to stay. And so we're not going to abuse that situation, and we're going to just let it sort of move off slowly and not really follow too much of her pattern this morning. We'll try and maybe get around to the rest of the herd, who seem to be a lot more calm than what she is. The rest of them are all inside the drainage line at the moment. So yes, you are big. I can see you can break a tree. Okay. While our grumpy female decides to destroy the furniture in the area, let's go back to Stef, who seems to have the lions back on the road, and well, it must be such a cute sight to watch those little bundles of joy trundle down the road.
Grumpy elephants and Tristan, eh? You don't want those two combined. We quite like Tristan. We don't want to feed him to the elephants at Djuma today. These lions are just walking into the grass now and giving us a view of them as they go off. Difficult to say if we're going to lose them or not. The grass is getting tall. There is a loop in the road here, which means they might come out on the other side, but we thought we'd make the most of the view we have now just before they do disappear. The sun is baking at the moment, and I think it's not too long from now before they decide to move off. It's just these tips of these ears and shoulder blades through the grass. It's actually quite terrifying. It generates these pictures in my mind of walking through this grassland and not seeing anything until you get right on top of these lions. Of course, lions sleeping for as long as what they do during the day, they won't always hear you. Let's go around the corner quickly. Jean, you wanted to know if the younger cubs would protect the older cubs from danger? No, they wouldn't. Not in my experience, at least, anyway, John. You will find that there will be they will growl. They won't want to move from where they are because of a safety thing. They're just bred that way. But just seeing what these little ones are doing. But no, they're not going to protect them at all, John. You're not going to find them standing up for their brothers and sisters. Generally, it's just this sort of mass escape. And let's go forward a little bit. And the sort of scramble for safety and a free-for-all, it generally is in the same direction. So they will almost instinctively know where the safest place is to go. Lions are coming out on the other side, which is good for us. Go forward a little bit. Let's see if we can't get a nice close-up view of these cats. Mother just keeping a little bit off to our side, wandering through these thickets. So it's difficult to judge where these animals are going to go. You can always aim for some shade. Yeah, let's see this gap and see if maybe we will be lucky. You've got to try and predict where these lions are going to go. And what we've done now is just given ourselves an eye-level view of this open patch here. There's shade now on the other side of this tree, so we'll see if this lioness comes through. Here she comes. All right, here she comes through the grass, exactly like we thought. And the cubs in front, there we go. And Mom. Very cool. Now that's this gap in this bush now, so we're going to give them some chance to go through this gap and come out on the other side. We'll be back with you if anything changes. In the meantime, we're going back to that fantastic elephant with Tristan.
Well, fantastic, I'm not so sure is a word I would use to describe this female. She's still grumpy as ever, and doesn't seem like she's actually feeding yet. She's still kind of watching us very carefully, and a few trees got the brunt of her frustration this morning, and so we've just been sitting tight waiting for her to drift away before we make a move. I don't want to sort of start the car and agitate her any further than she already is, so we'll just leave her to carry on, and if she starts to feed, then we know she'll start to relax a little bit and everything will be okay. And it seems like the rest of them are slowly moving along parallel with us inside this deep drainage section, and there's some young ones that are starting to come out, but they're all down in the bottom here. It's very dense inside there, so it's difficult to actually see. We can just more hear what's going on then actually see what's happening. But I think here comes her calf, has just come out now, and maybe that's why she's been a bit grumpy. She didn't quite know where the calf was, and was sort of providing a barrier between the calf and us by putting her body in the way, and that's why she was sort of a little bit grumpy with us, that we were a bit close to the calf, although the calf was further down into the drainage section, so we weren't exactly close at all. But she just seems to have had not really taken a liking to us. But I see she's starting to feed now, which is a good sign. As soon as she starts to feed, then we know that she's at least getting into a better mood, and that she'll be a lot more comfortable with our presence. When elephants are not feeding and they're watching you, that's when they're a little bit uncomfortable. As soon as they start to actually eat vegetation and kind of go about their normal business, it means that they've accepted your presence and that they're no longer worried about you. And so us just sitting back here, she seems to be happy with this sort of distance, and well, we're happy with it too. We can still see her beautifully, and you can see on the right there was a starling. It just flew off, unfortunately, but the starling was sitting up there, and it keeps following them around, and the reason why it's doing that is because these elephants, as they're moving, are disturbing quite a few insects within the grass, and the starlings are then coming down and grabbing those insects. But this morning is a perilous job to be grabbing insects around the foot of that female, because she's chased now I think 3 or 4 starlings by swatting her trunk at them, and she almost hit one just now. It was quite close call, and it's the closest I've ever seen an elephant's trunk get to a starling, but well, it happens. So Liz from Wisconsin, you're wondering if she looks pregnant. Well, not really. I suppose she could be early stages. There's a bit of roundness there, but it's not completely evident at this stage. She looks as though she does have a little bit of a round tummy there. So yeah, I would imagine she could be. I suppose it's possible. It's not, like I say, if it is, it's early stages. It's not in sort of full term yet. When they get pregnant and they're close to full term, then they really are very swollen and their stomach almost hangs. It's quite amazing to actually see. So I don't think she's just there yet. And judging by her calf that was there, which I presume is her calf, given that it went straight towards that female, I'd imagine she's due another one fairly soon. That calf already is probably, I would say, 4 or 5 years old, and generally the birthing interval between these young ones is about 4 years, so she is due another one at this stage. So maybe she is a little bit pregnant, and that's why she's a bit on the grumpy side. It is possible. Now, this herd is slowly moving in a southerly direction, and they're probably going to move all the way towards Djuma Dam, and so I'm going to just stay behind them and wait for them to all start coming out of this drainage section. And while we do that, let's go across to Stef, who's still got a view of those beautiful little lion cubs.
It's nice to know that you got some elephant in the Djuma bush. I miss that bush, actually. The memories I have over there are just many and very, very nice. These lions are just peeling out of the bush at the moment. There's just lions everywhere around us. It's awesome. You can see them marching down the road. The lionesses are definitely taking them somewhere. I'm not too sure where or for what reason. It's not unusual for lions to move around this time of the day. It still is relatively cool, even though the sun is fairly intense. You can see their fat bellies. They definitely had something to eat last night. I'd say probably a full-grown zebra again. Everyone's got a belly full of meat. These lionesses are really good huntresses. There you go, there's the lead lioness with the little cubs. She's taking her cubs somewhere, definitely. Miguel, you'd like to know if the lions here are bigger than the ones at Djuma or just bulkier? That's actually a good question, Miguel. I don't think so. I think that these lions are the same size as the lions in Djuma. I think that they, on average, I haven't seen any extraordinarily big lions. I have seen extraordinarily big lions in the Kruger National Park. Oh, talking about extraordinarily big, have a look at that elephant at the back of this lion. massive tusks. All right. Big Ellies, big lions everywhere. Lions in the road, lion cubs everywhere. Have a look at this view we've got here down the road. There's a traffic jam of lion. All different ages. From the 3 adults all the way through to the youngest cubs. Oh, that is just super cute. So, just to finish that statement, I don't think that these lions are any bigger, even though that the prey size that they eat here is on average bigger, I think, because they eat a lot of wildebeest and zebra here. The lions at Djuma, though, are supreme buffalo hunters. The Angama Pride have specialized in hunting buffalo, and that has led to, in my opinion at least, very strong lions. They're very bulky, very strong in their hindquarters and their forequarters. And the male lions that I've seen coming through Djuma are enormous. The Birmingham boys, while weren't too big when they first arrived, now are looking super. And I don't see a lot of male lions here, to be honest. You don't see too many of them out here. Well, I haven't, at least anyway, but I don't get out as much as the others do. But it'll be interesting to see. Michelle, you'd like to know if lion cubs will climb trees the same as leopard cubs do if they were in danger. Yes, they're not as good at climbing trees, of course, but they will climb trees when they can and if they can. And in particular in this area, I think that lion cubs would climb trees more often than those elsewhere because of the danger of hyena here. So a lot of hyena, and the only way to get away from hyena is actually to climb a tree. And so I think that there's pretty fairly well developed tree climbing skills, I would imagine. These lions having a drink. They don't need to drink. They get enough water from the prey that they eat, especially the insides, the juicy insides. But they won't waste a chance to drink some water where they can. And especially with a belly full of meat like this, these older cubs would take a drink whenever there was water available. As we can see, I don't think they're going to drink for very long. Oh, just look at that reflection in that puddle. Fantastic. A real super morning this morning. Elephants with Tristan in the dawn, in a wintry Djuma, and an entire lion family in the Mara Triangle in what is the start of their dry season. Nick in Michigan, you've just wanted to know if a rhino came across these cubs, would it attack it? Would it leave them alone? Nick, let me see if I can think about this question. I've never seen rhino attacking lion. I've seen lion riding rhino around. They do it as a bit of a game almost, and the rhino have almost always tried to get away. Would they attack lion cubs if they were around? I can't imagine why they wouldn't. In particular here you have black rhino, which are cantankerous things to start with. I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to attack a cub if they found it not lying around, with the exception of this thought. The areas where lion cubs are, frequently they smell like lion, and rhino's sense of smell is the most highly developed sense that it has. And I think that the overwhelming smell of lion would sort of prevent most of the attack from happening. And I think that unless a rhino was heavily provoked or it was really just in a perfect place at the perfect time. I don't actually think that would happen in reality. Is it feasible? Yes, of course. In reality, I don't think that it would happen. Not easily, at least, anyway. I'm going to just go past this bush and put us into a position where we can see these lions and give some space to some other vehicles to have a look at as well. There you go. Right, we are joined by a bunch of other vehicles, and so it's always good just to have some manners. There we go. There's that lioness standing on top of the termite mound. You might find that this is exactly what she wanted to do in the first place, was to come to the series of termite mounds. They're a rarity here. Definitely not as common as they are at Djuma. And the added advantage of being able to stick your head out of the grass and look at what you're hearing is massive here. And she's joined by her cubs doing exactly the same thing. Oh, that's beautiful. Sunny Jen, you'd like to know how would lions hunt without the grass to hide them? That's a good question, Sunny Jen. I can only talk from my experience watching lions in the Kalahari, which has got no grass and just sand. And there they use depressions. So very similar to here, where they'll pick thickets of grass and bushes to use. There's always these folds in the land. And lions will very often use these folds in the land to their advantage. They're supreme strategists when it comes down to killing things. And they will use any depression, bush, termite mound, rock, thicket that they can to try and get close to their intended prey. In this particular area, they use grass and thickets. At Djuma, they use the thickets and the drainage lines and ravines there. Kalahari, they use the folds in the sand and the sand dunes in between and on roads quite often. So it's definitely not a detriment to lion, in other words, not having grass. But in areas where there is grass, they'll obviously use it. The lion's busy, fastidious at cleaning themselves, much like any cat would be. Also, she's positioned herself on top of a termite mound, and I think it's just a habit of these cats in this area that they will use high points where they can. And it's just literally to get their faces and their heads out of the sea of grass, I think. I would presume that that's it. That lioness going up to another high point. She's definitely listening to something in front of her. She's not running from anything, so they're not moving from anything, and she's taking her cubs from one place to another because of danger behind us. She's definitely had her ears pricked forward most of the morning, so she's going someplace. Could she be moving dens? Yeah, she could. They do build up a smell, and that smell quite often is attractive to other predators. Male lion that move into an area will kill cubs if they're not theirs. And of course, hyena, the ever-present danger out here, will kill cubs as soon as they can if their cubs are left unattended and they can get to them. Soraya, you'd like to know how different the dry season is in the Mara as it is in Djuma. Well, the biggest difference I can show you is right now. There's no massive temperature variation so close to the equator. So summertime, wintertime, or let's call it dry season, wet season, temperatures are fairly similar, with the exception, of course, when it rains. Drought, excuse me, Soraya, it was the drought that you wanted to know. That's a good question. Mainly, the savanna that we have at Djuma is a woodland savanna, not a grassland savanna. So it's predominantly trees and shrubs. And drought affects trees and shrubs a lot more than it does grass initially. As we saw with the drought at Djuma over the last 24 months or so, It reduced the grass cover to 0, but at the same time, it also reduced the tree cover to virtually leafless, just with a little bit of leaves and twigs around. How it will affect this area, you probably find that initially we will have the grass getting drier and drier to a point where it actually lies down completely, and if it goes on for long enough, it'll actually turn into sand and blow away. I just want to move forward here so we can give some space. We've obviously, the news of lion cubs on the road has spread far and wide, and there's a lot of people that would like to come and watch, which is good. Alright, so Sarai, just to close off there, I think that initially we won't see too much of a difference, but what will happen is the fact that the grass cover will get lower and lower to a point where it disappears. Will it do that in the Mara? I'm not too sure. I'm not sure exactly how drought affects the Mara. This is the driest year in living memory in the Mara. The river's never been as low as it is now, and that will have an effect on the grass cover. And with us, you'll be able to go on this journey similar to how we enjoyed the drought at Djuma, and you'll be able to see exactly what happens and how it affects it over the next couple of months. All right, we're going to be sending you back over to Tristan, whose elephant are busy with some breakfast.
They are indeed. They are munching away, and you can just hear noise inside this drainage line as the rest of the herd is slowly moving along. And I'm really hoping that they're going to move a little bit further south, because it actually opens up quite nicely, and we can then get at least some sort of an impression of how many elephants we're dealing with here. Because it's just been this mother and her young one that have sort of hung around on the bank on our side. The rest sound like they're deep inside there, and so hopefully as we go down, it then becomes a sort of open flay almost. And it will be really nice to see the rest of them out and about in that area. You can see the little one. So I was saying earlier that one might be about 4, but I actually need to reassess that, because that elephant's quite big already. I would say it's already closer to 6-7 years old. You can see the tusks have started to grow, which is normally around 4 years old you start to see the tusks protruding, but just the size of that elephant, it's quite a big elephant already, and those tusks have grown quite far already. So I would say at least 6 years old. And so that female could definitely be pregnant and producing her next calf, which is why she might be on the grumpier side. But since we last saw you, she's been very relaxed. She hasn't given us 1 ounce of trouble. She's been just slowly feeding along and using this tree line to feed and watch us at the same time. And so she's been very pleasant since then, which is good. It seems that she's calmed down a little bit, and it's probably to do with the fact that we've given her quite a lot of space since she was a little bit grumpy with us, and so we've allowed her to just do her own thing. Sally Jane, you're wondering if elephants get toothache. Well, Sally Jane, it's one of the big reasons why elephants can be grumpy. A lot of the elephants that have caused trouble in the past and have attacked people have had some sort of tooth condition, and what it normally is normally an abscess that develops somewhere in one of the teeth, or particularly the tusk area. They do get big abscesses in their tusk areas, particularly if the tusk breaks inside that lip line, and then they can get a lot of infection developing there, and that can cause an elephant to be very, very grumpy. Much like us as people, toothache is going to be one of the worst things. So you can imagine with them, when they get a big infection on one of those massive molars, that it causes a bit of a problem. And so a lot of the grumpiness can be attributed to toothache and, well, just big infections that they do get. And it's normally from if they've crunched down on something and the tooth is broken in some way, and then vegetation gets packed in there and starts to rot, and that causes the infection to form, and that's why they get it. So not a nice situation at all, and one that is very uncomfortable for an elephant. You'll find sometimes the big bulls have it, particularly when they get older and they sort of on their way out, and that makes them highly aggressive, particularly when they're in must, and now they've got a toothache on top of it. It's not a very pleasant situation, and not one that you want, an animal that you want to spend too much time around. So I think let's try to go forward and just see if we can't find the rest of the herd. Now that she's tucked away in the bush there, it gives us a nice clear path just to get round her, and see if we can't find the rest of them just down below. Like I say, it does open out a little bit as we go forward, and so we should be able to see the rest of the herd fairly shortly. Right. Now I'm going to try and see if I can just get around this herd and get down and where they are. And while we do that, I believe Stef has got some lions that are starting to say hello to one another.
We've just had another lioness walk out of the grass behind us and came calling and just walked straight through this pride of lion and carried on going. And it's weird because we were expecting these lions to have quite an elaborate, excited greeting of this long-lost lioness, but that didn't happen. She just walked straight through and everyone then got up and followed her. But she is a beautiful lioness. I'm looking forward to getting to know these lions over the next couple of months and years as we go on. She's an enormous lioness, one of the largest lioness that I remember seeing out here ever. There the two sisters are saying hello to one another. They just rub heads, and that's because they've got a lot of sebaceous glands on their face and their necks, and they constantly rub each other's smell into one another, and that's how they recognize each other. It's not uncommon for lions to attack each other if they don't do a greeting ceremony. Quite often you see there's a lot of tension around lions saying hello to one another, or at least a lion approaching another group. They tend to value smell much more than what they value a lion at sort of face value. In other words, what the appearance is at a distance. In fact, lions that have, there's a lion on top of the termite mound there in the distance. In fact, lions that are being habituated to one another from different prides Ubawala, I'll answer your question about scent in a second, because it pertains to this particular one. But just to finish off that previous comment about lions that are being rehabilitated with one another, so orphaned lions, they will quite often spray scent of the lions onto one another and use a similar scent, even from lions from different pride mates, to try and get them acclimatized and accustomed to one another, and in that way stop as much fighting as what happens. And obviously injury, all the hard work that goes into rehabilitating a lion, then you don't want them to kill one another. Now, Ubawala, you wanted to know if lions pick out their prey by scent. Absolutely. Lions will absolutely pick out their prey by scent, but not exclusively. They've got incredible senses of smell. The furthest I've ever had any experience of a male lion responding to a leopard carcass in a tree was 6 kilometers away, which is a massive distance for a smell on the breeze to entice a lion. And so I don't think we can even imagine what it is like to have the senses that these cats have, and to be able to visualize what they can in their space around them. We, of course, visualize what we can hear and what we can see, and we put it into a picture about what we can comprehend. I don't know, I think it would be fantastic one day to be able to, probably virtually only, extend your senses to those of the animals that we share this planet with, in particular the animals that, we spend so much time with. Lion, or, seeing like a vulture, for instance, or hearing how a bat hears, or a dolphin, sensing its world through a sound vibration that comes in through its bottom jaw, for instance. Right, we're going to slightly reposition this vehicle now, and we're being treated this morning to these lions, but so are you in Djuma, apparently, because Tristan has found something super rare to show you as well.
Well, they are super rare, and we've done very well in being able to see them both last night and this morning. And I'm sure it's one of the same birds that we saw last night. It's not far from where I had them in the sunset sort of time yesterday, and they seem to have just flown this way. And we were sitting with the elephants, and we could hear them calling close by, and we then managed to spot them as we were just driving southwards. trying to see if we could get a gap on our elephants, and they're sitting in the tree and just grooming themselves, and I can't see clearly whether it's a male and a female or is it two males. It looks like two males, and the reason why I say that is because you can sex these ground hornbills by the coloration underneath their beak. So you'll find that the males will be bright red like we see there, and will have red underneath their throats, but the females will start to get a little bleeding of almost a purple coloration that starts at the base of the beak and then will start to go out into that red, and as they get older it becomes more and more pronounced, and I just can't see any purple on these guys at all. So it looks like two boys, and there was a female calling from around here, but she might be down on the ground already starting to feed. It's this time of the day that you'll find the hornbills are quite active in feeding, because what happens is a lot of what they feed off is reptiles, and so things like snakes, chameleons, lizards. This time of the day most of those animals have not had a chance to warm up and are quite sluggish and slow, and it's a great time then for them to go hunting and to find those animals and be able to grab them. They'll also be able to grab insects that are still quite cold on the grass, and so you find now is when these guys are really quite active. So a little bit of grooming, a little bit of getting all the feathers into good condition, and then I reckon we'll see them going down into the grass to start their foraging for the morning. That's a good yoga pose, that. I've got the foot right up to the chin, giving it a good scratch. I don't see any purple on that one either, so it definitely looks like two males at this stage. But they are such odd looking birds. To me they look very prehistoric. They look as though they come from another time, with that sort of wattled face and those big jet black wings and long legs. They almost seem like they come from when it was dinosaurs. You can imagine pterodactyls would have been something quite similar on a much larger scale, but I'd imagine that's what they would have looked like, with these big beaks and these sort of gnarly faces and big eyes that look at you, and then those long feet. And I was saying just now that these guys are quite prolific hunters. It's amazing actually to watch a grouping of ground hornbills walk around, and if you spend a bit of time with them, it's incredible how efficient they are at finding what they're looking for, and those big eyes will help them to be able to see what's going on. And I've seen ground hornbills walking along and catching multiple different prey animals in a morning session. And once followed a ground hornbill flock for about half an hour, and in that time they managed to get a couple snakes, there was a chameleon that was caught, a lizard, a couple scorpions, and varying sorts of crickets, and even a mouse got killed as well. So they really do go after quite a bit, and when it's breeding season it's the best time to follow them, because what you'll find is the males will come down and they'll grab all of these varying types of animals, and they'll grab, you know, the mice and the lizards and the chameleons and the snakes, and then they'll go and present them to the female, and so they have this beak full of different gifts basically, and they go up to the female and they present it to her, and that's how they try and woo her into mating with them. So it's a very clever system that they have. Now I was talking about sort of how we get to know the difference between the male and females, and well, I had the book out just so that I could show you, but here is the male on top. You see he's got the red like what we've been seeing on these two birds in the tree, and the red around the eye area. But the female, you see she gets a little bit of purple that gets into her sort of underneath her beak. Now I'm going to just get my finger out. So there's that purple, and that will be varying sort of patterns and shades as she gets older, and will start to kind of bleed out a little bit, and it's not quite as neat as what we see there. Then you'll notice that the young ones, they end up with a situation where they have this yellow face patch and face skin, and that will then change color into the red as they get older. It normally starts to change at about 3 years old, so it goes from that yellowish color more towards that red at about 3, and it takes a while for it to change. It doesn't just change overnight. And there we go, that's the male, female, and juvenile. And you can then see in flight those big white edges that we saw them busy grooming just now. Very cool. So Roshni, you're wondering how tall they are. Well, they stand at about 1.3 meters. It's fully grown, so I mean that's quite tall. It's about sort of, I would say, up to about my hip high when I'm standing up, maybe a little bit lower than that. I mean 1.3 would be excessively big, and you find that most of them are probably about a meter tall. That would be about the average for all of them. So they do get very big, and they are large birds that are able to then sort of go after many different prey items and overpower quite large prey items too. I know there was a sighting of one killing a francolin the one time, which is quite crazy, and managed to actually bring it out. Now I think the rest of them are just here. Here we go, Seb, look, they're going to come out. I'm going to just go forward because we've got some that are really close to us, and I wonder if it's not the female and the rest of them that are here. And wouldn't it be amazing if there's a nest in here? Now, I've never checked this jackalberry for nests, but they're in a tree that they would normally nest in. This big jackalberry that you see here is the perfect kind of tree for ground hornbills to nest in. So I wonder if they're here. You can just see them bouncing around inside here. You see them? There's lots here. There's juveniles. There's, looks like females as well. There they go. You see them flying out the back? Look at that. Isn't that cool? See, that wingspan is massive. So there's the female on the bottom there. You can actually see her darker throat patch already from here by the looks of it. So, and they're actually starting to make some noise. I wonder if they're going to start calling for us. There's one right down on the jackalberry as well. There we go. That looks like a youngish one. You see the red isn't quite as deep as what we saw on those other birds, and a little bit wobbly, so I think that's a younger bird that's just slowly starting to get its red skin. So we say about 3 years old for that bird. And then there's another one also in the tree that looks like it might be a little bit younger, but I wonder if this is not where they're using to roost. I don't see any sign of a nest. Normally the nests are in big holes in the trunks of the tree, and so I don't see any sign of that. But it might be just an area that they use to roost quite often. It's a big tree. It's a perfect place for a number of different birds to settle. Oh, look at that. That's so cool. So, Stacy, you're wondering why some birds have big variations between males and females in terms of color and other species don't. Well, Stacey, I'm not 100% sure. You'd probably find that generally the more colorful birds are not birds that are monogamous. So they're not birds that spend a lot of time together, and so the males have to have bright colors to be able to then ward off other males and to be able to display to that female and show their colors and show their sort of strength and their health. Whereas, you know, birds that are monogamous tend to be a lot more sort of dull. If you look at the eagle, so they all seem quite similar, both male and female, and they'll all pair together for life. And once they've found a pair, there's no longer that competition to mate that you'll see amongst other birds. And so you find your more colorful birds are ones that compete every season for mating rights, and so they need bright, flashy colors. And a bird that's not healthy, his plumage is going to be a little bit more sort of dull, and it will be quite easily seen by the female. So that's probably why that is the case. Now you can see this hornbill is busy pecking at that dead leadwood, so I wonder if it's not found some scorpions that are living inside there, and it's now trying to get them. So it uses that massive beak to be able to break open the bark and the wood and try and get to those scorpions that are inside. You can see it's leveraging away. What have you found inside there? It's difficult because I don't want to start the car, because generally if we start, the hornbills are a little bit shy and skittish and they can then fly off. There comes another one. You can just saw its shadow. It's going to land. There we go. Just landed behind the tree, and there comes another as well. So those are the two males that were behind us that have joined. This is very cool to see. It's been a long time since I've spent quite a bit of time with the hornbills, and particularly a big flock like this. And I wonder which grouping this is. They are all studied in the Sabi sands, so we do know all of the flocks in the Sabi sands. Well, not we as in myself and Sebastian, but there is the ecologists of the sands that are studying just how many ground hornbills we've got, and they're trying to monitor to see if there's an increase in the population, a decrease in the population, and how it's going. And so there is names for all of these different flocks. I'm just not sure which is which at this stage. I'll have to try and ask the guys and send them some of the footage and see. So Anna Marie, you were wondering if the ground hornbills have become sort of more endangered and that they are numbers are declining. Well, yes, they have. Their numbers have declined heavily for two reasons. One is we've had a lot of habitat loss. So I was saying to you that they require rather large trees with big holes to be able to nest in, and so deforestation has caused a lot of nesting sites to disappear. The other side of it is that they often feed in areas where there's farmland and there's toxins that are sprayed. These guys then come and try and feed off that, and they get poisoned, or they get no food in those areas and they then have to travel to other areas, and it becomes a bit of a problem, and so they lose a lot of chicks. The other thing with the ground hornbill is that they are not the best in terms of picking den sites, or nesting sites should I say. They'll often find, in particularly here in the Sabi Sands, the one grouping in particular has a nest site that is in a tree that is very exposed, and that means that there's going to be a high predation rate. You'll find things like genet, civet, leopard will all be able to get into this tree because it's quite low to the ground, big open gaping hole that any sort of predator can fit into, and that means that their numbers decline quite a lot. So they get a lot of natural predators, a lot of different types of predators for them as well. Snakes, like I said, genets, civets, leopard, all kinds of different things go after them, and so that's why their numbers have declined. In areas where they've got big forested habitats like this here in the Sabi Sands, from what I understand, our numbers of ground hornbills have actually increased over the last few years and have been pretty sort of steady in terms of growth. They're not growing fast, but there are a few more sort of flocks of them, and the numbers have been pretty good. So it just shows in areas where their nesting sites are not disturbed and where they have actual nesting sites to choose from and not reliant on just anything that they can find, it shows that their numbers can actually increase. Unfortunately, it's a lot of the birds have decreased in farmland areas. So Judy, you're wondering if these birds are intelligent. Well, they are quite intelligent. I've watched them figure things out. They seem to sort of be able to work out problems, and particularly when it comes to, oh, here comes one. It's going to fly in. Look at that wingspan. Oh, it just landed lower than I thought it would. I thought it would come up a little bit, but massive wingspan. You can see these all juvenile birds. This is amazing. This has got to be one of the best ground hornbill sightings I've had in a long time. But I was saying that they are quite intelligent. You'll find sometimes they'll find situations where they've got to try now and work out how to get food, and they'll then be able to break open branches and trees and things to get inside there. They'll be able to work out how to use the flock to corner certain animals and be able to then hunt them like that. And they're one of the few predators that is able to deal with tortoises. In fact, they're the biggest predator of tortoises, and they've worked out that they can flip them over and then use that long beak and pull out the legs and head and then kill the tortoise that way. So very clever. And you can see the juvenile is busy trying to beg for food, so every now and then it'll take its beak and sort of push it up towards the adult and sort of beg and hope that the adult is bringing food for it. Now Megan said it was winking at us just now. Well, they do like to wink every now and then. They've got these big beautiful eyes, and then they'll kind of look at you, and then often they will wink and sort of close their eyelid. It's quite cool to see. I always love watching ground hornbills. They're such a special bird, and like I say, just look so prehistoric. They don't look like something that we see every day out here, and with those big beaks and that bare face skin, it does not look common at all. See, look how it's begging. Look at how the little one is asking. See? And there we go. The adults are having enough of that. I'm off. I'm going to go land somewhere else. We just chased mom away, or dad away, should we say. That was dad that was sitting on the tree there. Well, still getting balance right. So Stephen, you're wondering if the hornbills will breed during drought. Well, Stephen, last year they did breed. I don't know what the success rate was. The last time I sort of spoke to the guys that were doing the research on it, they had mostly bred, and there was chicks in some of the nests, and so I don't know what the success rate was last year during the drought season, whether or not they actually had a better success rate or a worse success rate. I know that what they did say was last year that they were down in terms of nests that were active. So a lot of them nests had been prepared, but there was no actual evidence of a chick in the nest when they checked, and it could have been that they were going to nest afterwards, or it could have been that they had already lost their chick. No one's really sure. So it seemed like there was less nesting last year during that drought, so maybe it is a case that they aren't able to find enough nutrients, and they therefore sort of avoid nesting during that year. But I know last year wasn't the best in terms of nesting. There was a number of the nest sites that were not active. Now, talking about big birds, Stef, all the way in the Masai Mara, has got the biggest of all the birds we get here in Africa, and they're hanging out with the tallest of creatures that we get out here too.
Talking about big birds and big things, you had the largest hornbill, now you've got the largest bird in the world, and behind it you've got the tallest mammal in the world as well. It's a lot of firsts here today. This is the ostrich and female ostrich. They're the browner of the two, mainly because they look after the eggs during the day, whereas the black male looks after the eggs at night time. If we pan across here, if I could ask you, Zana, we've got a giraffe drinking at that pan. We'll come back to these ostriches now. It's quite rare to see giraffe drink in the open, which gives us an insight into how they use that, or how they get over the fact that their head is so far away from the ground. It's not easy for giraffe to do what they're doing. Have a look there, legs splayed. They've got a very typical, uncomfortable look to drinking. Isn't that incredible? Now, to stop all the blood in their body from rushing into their head and popping their eyeballs out of their skull, they've got a fine net of capillaries just behind where their ears are, which forms a very effective trap for blood. So it keeps their blood pressure steady in their head by allowing only one platelet through at a time. Allowing that giraffe to get down in that very typical gait. So they'll suck up some water and then a very flick when they're done. It's also quite typical. They'll flick up and the water will get ready with your screenshots at the flick. And it'll flick now. You'll get hopefully the water in the sunlight streaming in an arc in front of the giraffe. There we go. There with that little flick. Hopefully you're quick enough to get that. A lot of animals around this plane in actual fact. Let's see if this giraffe is still thirsty. Still thirsty. This will give you another opportunity to get that flick if you missed out on that one. Now, Andrea, you'd like to know how tall giraffes get. These Maasai giraffe, which are different to the common giraffe that Tristan would be able to show you from Djuma, don't get as tall, but the tallest of them gets to about 5.5 meters, which is about 15 feet, 16 feet. There we go, and that flick in the air. The 15 or 16 feet into the air, Andrea, which is about as high as what an elephant can reach without standing on its back legs and obviously pushing a tree down. So they can reach and the flick. What is quite interesting to see is these Maasai giraffe flick at the end of their drink. In other words, when they lift their heads up. Watch over the next couple of months and years and we'll show you a common giraffe out of Djuma, and they always flick as they come up. They don't flick at the end, which is an observation I didn't know until right now. Let's see this again. Flick, flick, there we go. Oh, bizarre. And that was exactly 4 times that it did it. So that is the Maasai giraffe doing that. It'd be interesting to see if other giraffe do the same thing or whether they're a little bit more common. In other words, flick as they finish drinking rather than right at the end of the journey back up into the sky. Oh, a lot of giraffe. One thing about these Maasai giraffe is that there's some warthog on the right-hand side and a topi standing on top of a termite mound. A sort of quintessential picture from the Masai Mara is these topi that enjoy standing on top of termite mound. Not quite sure why, but they always do. Doesn't look like they're vigilant, although Brent was busy telling me that quite often he's found cheetah just by following around these topi who are very vigilant on top of these termite mounds. And show him where the cheetah are. It's a fairly large warthog that as well. Bird flying towards you. Is a dove. A lot of things around here at the moment. There's a marsh in the distance. So the little river that runs next to our camp empties out into that marsh that you're looking at there now. It's where the green grass is, and there you can see all the animals that are on that marsh. That's the last of the greenest grass. Those are all zebra. And then the tree line is where the Mara River runs. And on the other side of that, in the next couple of days, I'm hoping to see the hills turn black with wildebeest. The wildebeest are just on the other side of that hill. If you want to know where the migration is, where the head of the migration is, just on the other side there. Christine in Texas, you'd like to know why the Mara trees are flat-topped. I presume you mean at the bottom. That thicket that you've got on the left-hand side there is testimony to that. I presume you mean that they've got a browsing line like you see there now. That is just quite simply giraffe. So giraffe and elephant would feed up into that canopy, and where they can't reach anymore is where the leaves stop. And that is a favorite of these Maasai giraffe. And if we pan around any thicket, you will see a similar browse line appear in almost every one of these thickets. Is that there's giraffes where they stop being, where they can't reach anymore. That is where the leaves and the branches start. You'll see this thicket that's coming into view now on the right hand side. Another brilliant example of feeding pressure on these trees. Not all trees, just tends to be a select few. They quite enjoy the Warburgia here. I was told that they almost exclusively feed on that, which is those trees that you see there. I was also quite amazed the first time I came into the Mara and saw these bare trees at the bottom with these very distinct browse lines, until a friend called Patrick, who works out of Little Governor's Camp, told me that that's just the giraffe. Okay, we've got some more giraffe drinking over here now. Another giraffe, not the same one. Let's see if they give the flick at the terminal end of their rise into the air. They drink and then flick. At the end, let's see if the one at the back there does the same thing. Or if it's just this funny giraffe. Nice big mouthful of water. And flick. Yeah, that is more like it. See that flick as they came up. And a good drink, eh? Let's see that one at the back, if it repeats it again. I think giraffe have to be one of the most bizarre animals on the face of the planet. How could you ever explain that to someone who's never seen a giraffe before? Let's see what happens now. And there we go. Alright, so it seems also at the end there, so I'm still undecided at the moment. The problems that we have out here in the Mara Triangle, trying to decide whether a giraffe flicks its face before it finishes its rise or after. Stacey, you wanted to know if it's true whether the giraffe have no vocal box, a vocal voice box, and if they don't make any sounds. They do have a voice box, Stacey. They do make sounds, they just don't make sounds very often. So it is it's a bit of it's a myth out there in the world that giraffe don't make any sound or have no voice box, but I've definitely heard giraffe making noises before. It's generally only when they're highly disturbed they make a growling noise, and then they also hum as well when they sleep.